The 524th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
And that could make a difference. Lawson at the buzzer. Got it! Maybe not. Ty Lawson wins it at the buzzer.
Deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Gets the roll. Here we go. Page has it. Carolina down one. 84-83. Page into the front court with 4 seconds. Page to the rim. Got it! He got it! 9/10 of a second to go. Inbounds. Washington gets it to Warren. His full court shot. No good. Marcus Page baby. Does it for the Tar Heels. Carolina wins it.
Don't force it if you're Goss.
Comes in. Blocked by Meeks. Buried up ahead to Jackson. And he tucks it down for the 5-point lead. Matthews off the mark. And this year the confetti is going to fall for North Carolina. They're not going to be denied this time. Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Four Corners podcast. I know that's not normally how we introduce the show, but I am here by myself. We are powered, of course, by Carolina Electrical Services. And the Tar Heels, they played earlier today in the ACC tournament, a little over an hour since Carolina played in their first round matchup, or their second round matchup, first matchup for them in Charlotte as they took on Notre Dame. And the Tar Heels come out victorious with a performance much like we had seen from Carolina during their 6-game winning streak against lesser opponents. Carolina finding a way to own those opponents and dominating those games. And so this was more of the same for Carolina in this one. It started out very early where Carolina with 14 points in the first 4 minutes of the game before going to the under 16 timeout. That's exactly how you wanted to see Carolina jump out and start this game. And they find a way to win 76-56 over the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We'll, of course, do everything that we normally do on this edition of the podcast. We'll take a look at the box score. We'll hear from Hubert Davis, the head coach of Carolina basketball. And then we will give you the stat of the game, also some takeaways from the game, and give you a bubble watch on what exactly is going on around the rest of college basketball. As the Tar Heels, as I mentioned, they did take down Notre Dame 76-56 for their 7th win in the last 8 games. The only loss, of course, during that stretch to the Duke Blue Devils. Carolina now improves to 21-12. They are 13-7 in the ACC. So closing in on that magic number that some thought they would have to hit, that 22 win mark. But ultimately, it may not matter for Carolina because they may not have the right wins. We can talk about that a little bit later. Jalen Withers with 21 in this game for Carolina. He was 7 of 10 from the field. And guess what? They were all from beyond the arc. They were absolutely outstanding throughout the day from beyond the arc. Carolina shot 48% from the field and 46% from 3, hitting 13 of their 28 shots from the outside. And really, this was just a strong performance all around from Carolina. As I mentioned, I love the way that Carolina started the game, a team that looked hungry, looked ready to go against a Notre Dame team that, we didn't know what Notre Dame would look like. Would they be a team that could build off of the momentum of yesterday, or are they a team that was just going to be incredibly tired after a 4 overtime game to close out their regular season slate against California, then having to play yesterday's game right down to the end? They had to play 40 minutes with Pittsburgh, and that's what that team looked like. They looked worn down. Carolina took advantage of it early, created some turnovers, got running down the court, and unfortunately for Notre Dame, they were not able to keep up. Fortunately for Carolina, the shots were falling from beyond the arc, and that's really what allowed Carolina to start the game so hot, was their outside shooting, which returned in this game. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go throughout the broadcast. Let's take a look at the box score from Carolina's perspective. And as Josh would say, it is a pretty one for the Tar Heels today over Notre Dame. Again, the final score 76-56. And in this game, Carolina shoots 48% from the field. They were 28 of 53. Meanwhile, Notre Dame 32% from the field, 20 of 62 overall. From beyond the arc, Carolina 46%, 38 of 28, or 38, excuse me. That would be an unbelievable record for Carolina. It was 13 of 28, rather. You had 6 of 20 on the other side for Notre Dame, just a 30% clip for them. Free throw line, neither team great. Carolina just 7 of 12, an area that they'll need to clean up as they move along in this tournament if they want to continue to advance. 58% there. Notre Dame with the slight advantage. They were just 10 of 17 from the foul line at a 59% clip. Carolina turned the ball over more than Notre Dame did, but here's the key. Carolina with 8 turnovers. That turned into 8 points on the other end for Notre Dame. 6 turnovers for Notre Dame, 8 points for Carolina. Rebounds, Carolina with the advantage there, 42-34 on the glass. Defensive rebounds, Carolina with 34 defensive rebounds. Notre Dame with just 24. The Irish did hold the advantage on the offensive glass with 10 offensive rebounds, which they converted into 7 second chance points. Meanwhile, Carolina with 8 offensive rebounds that they turned into 9 second chance points. The bench points even at 13. Paint points in favor of Carolina, 28-26. Fast break points also in favor of the Tar Heels at 6-1. Blocks, Carolina with 4, a few early in the game for Carolina that helped to give them the advantage that they had in the first half. The blocks, 3 for Notre Dame. Steals, Notre Dame with 7, Carolina with just 3. The assist, boy, this was a huge difference in this game, and we'll talk about it more throughout this edition of the podcast. 19 assists in this game for Carolina, just 6 assists in this game for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The game was tied 0 times, that can't be right. No, the game was tied right out of the gate. That was the only time it was tied. So it wasn't tied any other time. There was no lead changes, but 24 seconds to start out the game. The game was tied, and then Carolina eventually leads 39 minutes in this game and 11 seconds. So Carolina controlling this game all the way throughout like we thought was possible. And, you know, when you look at this game and you look at that box score, I think that just shows that Carolina did what they had to do. They needed to be dominant in this game. And I think that's exactly what you got in this one for the Tar Heels. I mean, they're looking, this is the thing. You can't really do anything to help yourself right now with the teams that you're facing, but you can do something to hurt yourself. And so I definitely think that this is something that hopefully, Carolina, can build off of. Hopefully they, this sort of sets the stage and gets that confidence back under them. I don't think they lost any confidence. Don't get it wrong. I think Carolina came into this game very confident based off of what they had done prior to the Duke game. And it felt like even when you heard some of the conversations that were being had after that Duke game, that Carolina was in a pretty good headspace. And I think they showed that today, that they're ready for this ACC tournament. Of course, tomorrow will be a much stiffer test against a much better team in Wake Forest. But for Carolina, they're just hoping that they can build off of what they did today. All right, now it's time to get to the quote of the game. This is from the head coach, Hubert Davis. He spoke with the media afterwards, and he was up on the stand. That's what served as the Continental Tire's coach's corner for the Tar Heel Sports Network as well. And he was asked a question about the success of the team on the inside and how that was a big difference for the team today.
It's huge because, I know Jay Witt hit 7 threes, but Vin was dominating points in the paint. Notre Dame went to a switch attack where they were switching everything, and so we were able to take advantage of smaller guys guarding our big guys down low on the post. But to Vin's point and Jay Wash's, just their ability to hold off, to be able to be strong around the basket and be able to finish. When you can have that versatility offensively of being able to score beyond the three and also points in the paint and be able to get to the free throw line, that makes you really efficient on the offensive end. And then go along, we had less than 10 assists, and that's something that's always been a goal for us to have less than 10 assists each game. That's huge because, I know Jay Witt hit 7 threes.
Okay, yeah. Did not mean to have it play twice there. But, yeah, you hear what he says there. Now, he does mean less than 10 turnovers. He does not mean less than 10 assists. Carolina with 19 assists in this game to just 8 turnovers. Definitely what he's looking for as the head coach of this team. And I think, the way that this team played in the front court today, and you could say, well, Jalen Withers, 7 of 10, all of it from the outside. So how great really was the front court? But Vin Allen Lubin continues to do the things that we talked about. The reason why why Carolina has been so successful is because he has taken the next step. 8 of 13 today, 17 points in the paint for him. And that's what you're looking for. That's what you're hoping that he can bring for Carolina. Another double-double. So this is the second time in the last 3 games that he's come away with a double-double. Love that performance from him. And 5 offensive rebounds. Carolina with just 8 as a team in this game. But he comes away with 5 offensive rebounds and is a big part of why Carolina had the success that they did when it came to second chance points. That's what you're hoping that he brings to the table. He's not going to be a guy that's going to be able to take over games like Armando did because of his size. He's a guy that, isn't necessarily going to be able to, get you a defender on the low block, put him on his hip, and back him down to the basket and finish. But you've seen Carolina's been creative with how they've been able to get him the basketball. A lot of screening action. Hubert mentioned, I think, I don't remember if he mentioned it right there, but he may have mentioned it in a couple. I know he mentioned it rather in a couple of the other statements that he said. Rather, excuse me, guys. And he talked about how Carolina noticed that they were switching everything, and they were able to take advantage of that because Vin Allen Lubin working against these guards leads to success. So that high ball screen that creates that switch, yeah, it works for the guards. You saw that early in the game against Duke. Carolina was able to take advantage of that quite a few times when Kaman Malawach was on the floor. The guards were able to go to work against the big. Well, in this game, it was the big going up against the guards and taking advantage of that. And so, a great job by Vin Allen Lubin. When you have that type of floor stretching ability from the 4 spot for Jalen Withers, which was missing early in the season. I said that, throughout, that Carolina just wasn't getting consistent floor or consistent presence that could stretch the floor on the offensive end. Drake Powell had moments where he was able to do it, but they needed someone that could finally show a little bit of consistency there. And here's the thing about Jalen Withers. If there's one place where we know that Jalen Withers is going to play well outside of the game against Florida earlier this season, it is Charlotte. He has really thrived here. You remember the 2 NCAA tournament games that were played here last year. This is his hometown, and he likes playing here. And you saw that again today. He was on fire early. You could see him sort of talking a little bit of trash. He did the celebration with his hand over his mouth like that. So that's what you want to see, man. Now, we talked about that attitude that Carolina has to be able to bring. And we've seen it from a guy like Seth Trimble. Now you're starting to see it from some other guys out there, guys that, we were hoping would step up, not only as scorers, not only as just players overall, but as leaders on the team. Jalen Withers is a senior. You were hoping that you would see that at some point, and that's shown through. Also, if you're looking for how he had an impact on the inside, he definitely did on the defensive end of the floor, where he pulled down a team-high 9 defensive rebounds. All of his rebounds in this game were defensive, but a tremendous performance from those two in the front court. And even Jalen Washington, 6 points in this game. Only played 10 minutes, was 2 of 5 from the field. Would like him to be a little bit more efficient there. But I certainly thought he brought what Carolina needed him to bring off the bench in this one. So, I mean, you look at this group that Carolina, has in the front court now and how much better they're playing. That's going to be the key to success, because they sort of disappeared a little bit in that game against Duke. You need Vin Allen Lubin, and if that matchup happens again, to play the way that he did today. Not saying he has to score 17 points, but you want to see him being a part of the offense for Carolina if they're going to find a way to beat the Blue Devils and pick up that quad 1 win that they so desperately need. Stat of the game, we go with 3-point shooting here. Really, it was between this and the assist, because both of them are just huge. But Carolina in this game, 13 of 28 from beyond the arc. That's a 46% clip. Meanwhile, on the other side, for Notre Dame, just 6 of 20, 30% in this game. And really, the percentages are one thing, but when you look at the makes, that's really the big difference. That's where you get Carolina winning this game by 20. When you can make those outside shots, and Carolina has become really, really good at finding ways to get those outside looks that they weren't earlier in the season. And what's the difference? People are like, well, they were throwing up as many threes as they are. What's the difference? They're getting cleaner looks because the ball is moving a lot better. You saw that again today. I mean, 19 assists in this game for Carolina shows you just how open a lot of guys were, that they don't have to, take the ball, dribble, and try to create separation. That didn't really happen today for Carolina. You had a couple of moments where R.J. Davis was able to do it. Ian Jackson tried it a couple of times. But other than that, it was a lot of catch and shoot, because the looks were really, really good for Carolina. And so that's the key is, yes, you want to be able to knock down shots from the outside. And, hey, if you're going to be able to knock down those shots where you are using your dribble to create a little bit of rhythm, then that's fine. But you don't want that to have to be the whole game, which it felt like the other night against Duke it was. That's why Carolina went cold in the second half. This game, a lot different. Guys are open pretty much throughout because of the way that Carolina was dribbling and passing the basketball, and it leads to a lot of success for the Tar Heels. All right, let's get back into some of our takeaways here. Thanks. We thank all of you guys that are joining us here in the middle of a work day, getting this edition of the podcast done, then going to head over to the Spectrum Center to watch the nightcap alongside my normal co-host here, and the guy that actually is the main host of this show, Josh Marlowe. But really do appreciate you guys that are tuning in and eventually listening back to this on the podcast. I mentioned the great start, and I really think that's what set the tone for this game. Carolina gets off to, and I think I got this wrong when I first said it. Carolina gets out to a 17-5 lead before the first stoppage of play in this game after the 4-minute mark. And so Carolina with a 12-point lead right out of the gate, and that really set the tone. Notre Dame was a team that just looked worn out. Carolina comes out knocking down shots from the outside. I mean, Jalen Withers misses his first 3 and then just goes off during that stretch where he hits 3 from beyond the arc. And that's what really allowed Carolina to lengthen that lead out. And it was never within single digits ever again for Carolina. So, I mean, we've talked about before Carolina getting off to good starts in games like this. And we saw it against Virginia. They sort of let Virginia back into that game. They didn't do that today. And there was a chance that Notre Dame, a team that has shot the 3-ball well, you look at the way that they shot it towards the end of the first half. Matalacco tries to put him back in the game. And all of a sudden you're saying, oh boy, here we go. Carolina could be locked in if they don't come out ready to start this second half. They could be locked in a tight game. Carolina responded, came out of the locker room ready to go. But really it was that great start that sort of set the tone for everything today. And I mentioned that great start. It was because of the perimeter shooting, which returned as a whole. And you look, I mean, yeah, Jalen Withers is a big part of it. When you knock down 7 threes, it's going to be really hard for Carolina not to get to double-digit threes. But, I mean, a good day for him from beyond the arc. R.J. Davis, 3 of 6 from beyond the arc. Elliot Cadeau early in the game with a really deep three. You love to see that. You love to see Carolina's guys confident that they can knock down shots from the outside. And this is what is so different from early in the season, where Carolina knew, you go back to that losing streak and how stagnant the offense was and how bad it looked. It was because Carolina wasn't getting good looks from beyond the arc. As I mentioned, now they are. But more importantly, you've got guys that are finally in rhythm. And you could say that that's because they're getting the open looks. Yes, that certainly is part of it. But also, you've just got guys that have started to click. You know, R.J. Davis is starting to shoot the ball a little bit more consistently from beyond the arc. He's still, going to be in the low 30s for his season. But I think the most important thing is that this time of the year, he's able to knock down those shots. For the most part, we've seen Ian Jackson be able to knock down those shots. He doesn't knock one down today, but I do think that, he has been pretty consistent. I mean, you're talking about a day where Seth Trimble and Ian Jackson, when it combined 0 for 4 from 3, and Carolina still ends up making 13 threes. Drake Powell always seems to be able to chip one in for Carolina. But the big one, to me is, of course, Jalen Withers. And you've got a guy now that is stretching the floor, that is confident when he does so. And that is just so different for Carolina than earlier in the season. So a hat tip to Jalen Withers today. He was a big part of why Carolina was able to do what they were. But that three-point shooting as a whole, that's what's going to carry Carolina this week. If Carolina is able to make a deep run and is able to pick up that quad one win that they so desperately need, it's going to be because of the three-point shooting. Because, yeah, everything else, just shooting in general, you like for Carolina to be, to put, together the type of game that they put today. 48% from the field, pretty solid. We've seen them sort of be consistently in that range during this streak where they've won 7 out of 8. But the three-pointers, I mean, if they can find a way in each game of this tournament to get to double-digit three-pointers, God forbid they're able to get to 12 in each game, I think Carolina has a chance to win every game that they play here in Charlotte. And you look at the way they've been shooting that three ball. I mean, during this stretch, they are one of the country's best three-point shooting teams. So hopefully they can keep it up. Hopefully Jalen Withers stays hot, but they were definitely hot today from beyond the arc, and that was a big difference. As I mentioned when we were talking earlier after the quote from Hubert Davis, the front court is just so different. And, you're getting contributions from everybody, but Vin Allen Lubin really is the guy that deserves the shout out for today. Again, 17 points for him in this game, 8 of 13 from the field. All those field goals, of course, inside the arc. But the offensive rebounding and the ability to finish second chance points, that's what he was brought here to do. And Vin Allen Lubin in this game, the best plus minus of anybody on the floor. We've heard so much about that stat when it's come to Drake Powell and how successful he's been during this stretch. But Vin Allen Lubin in this game, a plus 28. And that continues to show you just how effective he is, as opposed to Jalen Washington, who, as I mentioned, I did not think was really all that bad in this game, but still was a -3. Withers was just Withers was outstanding as well, but it was Vin Allen Lubin and what he was able to do on the offensive end. And then even on the defensive end, both him and Withers today, really effective. Both guys with 2 blocks in this game, a steal for each guy. Actually, Jalen Withers with 2 steals in this game. So, I mean, these guys were bringing it on both ends of the floor. And if you can get that type of consistency from them throughout this week, then Carolina is going to have a chance to make a deep run here. And again, it doesn't need to be the scoring. We don't need to see 17 points in every game from Vin Allen Lubin. We don't need to see 21 from Jalen Withers, because you would imagine that better days are hopefully on the way for guys like Seth Trimble, who scores 1 point in this game. for Ian Jackson, who scores 4 points in this game. You would hope those guys, maybe start to come back to earth, or not come back to earth. They've already come back to earth, but rather, can find their stride once again after they both struggled really since that Duke game. I think that this front court, though, the way that they're playing right now and the way that they've played during this streak, we've gotten to the point now where it is not just a fluke. Carolina is doing the things that they need to do. These big guys are doing the things that they need to do to be successful, and they're giving Carolina a paint presence. In this game, Carolina with 28 paint points, and in a game where you make 13 threes, where that's 39 points right there. You love the fact that you're getting 28 points in the paint to sort of balance that out. Carolina's guards are attacking. They're trying to get to the basket if they have the opportunity to do so. But then I mentioned the switching of Notre Dame definitely worked out today and allowed Vin Allen-Lubin to be successful. And he's starting to become better at converting those opportunities. Early in the season, you could tell that physicality really bothered him. He's doing a much better job of finishing through the physicality. We've seen that field goal percentage go up as the season has gone along for him. And that really is what has made Carolina much more effective, because early in the year, it was either the guards were getting to the basket and scoring inside, or Carolina was getting absolutely nothing in the paint. That has changed so much over this winning streak, and it's a big part of why Carolina is where they're at. Passing in this game was tremendous. I mentioned Carolina turned the ball over 8 times, which is a really solid number. I mean, Notre Dame only turns it over 6 times. Carolina not able to force a ton of turnovers on that end of the floor, despite Notre Dame being a team that averaged 11 per game coming in. But I really liked the way that Carolina was able to pass the ball today. 19 assists in this game, 16 of which came from your backcourt. Elliot Cadeau, 10 assists in this game, also chipped in 6 rebounds. So a really good game from him, even though he didn't score the ball, just 3 points, only shot the ball twice, but a really efficient day from him. 10 assists, 2 turnovers. RJ Davis, meanwhile, on top of his 13 points, he has 6 assists to just 1 turnover. So Carolina's guards doing a great job of distributing the basketball. And yeah, when you assist on 19 of your 28 made shots, it's hard to argue with that type of success for Carolina. You're hoping that that continues, because one of the things that disappeared in the game against Duke was the strong passing ability. A lot of isolation basketball with guys just taking it into their own hands, holding it for nearly the entire possession, and then trying to get a shot off. And for RJ Davis, late in that game, it made sense. Nobody else was really scoring the ball, and Duke was doing such a good job of denying any sort of passing that Carolina wanted to do out, on the top of the perimeter. And so, credit to Duke for being able to do that in that game. But Carolina got back to what they've been doing during this winning streak, which is making the right passes when they need to. That was the big thing for Carolina today, was just how well they facilitated the ball and created those open looks. Because, again, that's the big thing, is that, yes, this team is shooting much better. They've gotten into a bit of a rhythm. But when you are open, it's going to be easier to knock a lot of those shots down. So credit to Carolina's guards. Credit to Elliot Cadeau, a guy that has a lot of buzz around him right now about what his future is going to be here in Chapel Hill. It would be easy to just sort of quit on the season and say, who really cares? I'm focused on next year. He's not doing that. RJ Davis continues to take steps as a guy that is now starting to share the ball as well as just about anybody in the ACC. He's done a great job throughout the year of developing that part of his game when shots weren't falling. So a great job done by him in this game to help Carolina to one of their best assist to turnover ratio days of the entire season. Then defensively, to close it out, I mean, look, Carolina in this game, the Notre Dame 56 points. Carolina did a really good job, only created 6 turnovers, but it did feel like more. But the key was early in the game, Carolina was there forcing those turnovers. you look at the guys that you thought could have big days for Notre Dame. Marcus Burton, a guy who came in averaging over 22 per game, led the conference in scoring this season. He goes just 3 of 11. Drake Powell was on him early in the game. Hubert Davis was asked about it in the postgame, and he basically just said, hey, that's Drake Powell, man. He can cover pretty much any position on the floor that Carolina needs him to, and he did a great job against one of the best scorers in the ACC. And then Tay Davis, just 9 points in this game, 3 of 13 from the field. Both of those guys did not register a three-pointer from the outside. The only guy that had any sort of success in that department was Matt Alako, but Carolina did a much better job of locking him down in the second half, not allowing him to get to the spots that he wanted to. I mean, didn't score in the second half after scoring 9 points in the first half and doing everything that he could to try to keep Notre Dame in shouting distance. But Carolina did a really good job throughout the day in their half-court man-to-man defense. Did not see Carolina throw out the full-court press. Didn't see them go zone because they didn't have to. Active hands nearly all day, and just did a really good job of communicating where they needed to be on the floor. So, credit to this group. They have been, up and down all year long on the defensive end of the floor. And we saw it again the other night where Duke comes out. They start the game 12 of 16. But in this game where Carolina needed to play well defensively against Notre Dame, limit the opportunities that a guy like Burton or Tay Davis had, Carolina did it throughout the day. They were able to shut both of those guys down. And that's a big part of why Carolina is able to win this game. The other big part, rebounding. Carolina +8 on the glass, as we mentioned. No one really with a big day outside of Constant Nafsky, who had 9 rebounds. Nobody else for Notre Dame had more than 4 rebounds in this game, while, as I mentioned, Carolina's front court really doing the bulk of the work there. You had 21 rebounds between the 3 guys that played in the front court for Carolina in this game. Cade Tyson did play 7 minutes in this one, did not register a rebound, but the other 3 guys were absolutely tremendous in that department, took care of what Carolina needed them to take care of there, and it's a big part of why Carolina walks away with the victory in this one. All right, guys, let's take a look at the bubble again. It's just me by myself, so it is going to be a little bit of a shorter edition of the podcast. But Arkansas played earlier today in the first round of the SEC tournament. That's how deep that conference is. Yes, we're going to be hearing that all week from ESPN about how amazing it is that all these teams could possibly make the NCAA tournament out of the SEC. Arkansas with a 72-68 victory over South Carolina. So they had to survive that one. Maybe it hurts them a little bit, but they were one of the teams that, if you go off of Joe Lunardi, is listed as a last 4 buys team. So you would imagine that means that they're going to stay put for right now. Cincinnati, meanwhile, eliminates themselves basically from NCAA tournament contention. I mean, that was a team that had 14 losses coming into today. So even if they would have won against Iowa State, would have been an unbelievable win, would have been a great resume win, but probably would not have put them in the field. They lose 76-56. And so they are out, which means that Carolina doesn't have to worry about them. The one team that is behind Carolina that is having success right now and looks like they're going to win their first round conference tournament game in the SEC is Texas. They're up 72-59 over Vanderbilt. That's with 3:14 remaining in the game. They're about to go back to the free throw line thanks to a foul from Tyler Nickel, the former Tar Heel, who is not having the most successful day from beyond the arc. Outside of that, no other teams playing right now that are on the bubble. But tonight you do have Ohio State facing Iowa. That's a massive game for Carolina. If they could get an upset there, that could be what could eventually put Carolina into the field. As of right now, Carolina is still the second team out, according to Joe Lunardi. Meanwhile, Baylor, another team that has a lot of losses in that Big 12, they will play later on this evening against Kansas State. That'll be 7 o'clock on ESPN Plus. By the way, 6 o'clock for that Ohio State-Iowa game. That'll be over on Peacock if you guys want to check that out. But if Baylor was to lose tonight, 18-14 would be their record. They had a 10-10 record in the Big Ten. They would have an interesting resume because that's a lot of losses. And typically we've seen it before where there are experts that have those teams in. And then when we get to the actual tournament selection committee making their choices, those are the types of teams that get left out. If you're that close to being 500, they will typically sometimes leave those teams out. So I would not cast that one off despite Lenardi having them as a last four buys team. I think personally that's a team that should be firmly on the bubble because I just don't think they're a tournament team. I've watched them play a few times this year and have never really left impressed. One other team that I think could potentially be on the bubble after today, not sure where they're going to ultimately fall, is Colorado. Is West Virginia. That's a team that lost to Colorado early today. I know that's a team that right now Lenardi has as a 9 seed in his bracket, but that's a really bad loss to Colorado. I mean, I know Colorado won yesterday against TCU, but that is the 16 seed in the Big 12, a team that went just 3-17 in conference play this year. That should be seen as a bad loss and should potentially put West Virginia on the bubble. So certainly, some teams that could be worth monitoring here. Of course, Carolina, doesn't matter if they don't take care of business tomorrow against Wake Forest. We'll be back to preview that game for you later on this evening, right here on these same platforms on Josh's Twitter page, on the Heel Tough Blog Facebook page, and over there on the Heel Tough Blog YouTube page. So make sure that you guys check all of that stuff out. Make sure that you're following all those pages, liking all those pages as well. We would greatly appreciate that. If you're on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to the page so that whenever we go live, you get that notification. You can hop on there and watch it. I know we've been slowly growing a little bit of a YouTube following, so I would greatly appreciate it if you guys could do that. Meanwhile, on the website side of things, we'll have the recap up from today's game. That'll probably go up later tonight because there is not much internet connection to be had over there in the Spectrum Center for the media, unfortunately. That's been one of the issues. That's the reason why Josh was not able to join us today, was hoping that in between games he'd be able to hop on with us, but unfortunately he is not. And so that'll be the plan probably the rest of the week with Carolina playing early, actually really just tomorrow, because then they'll go to some of the later night games if Carolina does advance. But tomorrow should be the same plan. I'll be here by myself recapping the game against Wake Forest, and then we'll be back later in the evening previewing the game against whoever, if Carolina does end up advancing. Regardless of what happens, we'll have you covered. There'll be a preview up on the website tomorrow morning for Wake Forest, so make sure that you guys keep an eye out for that. And football-wise, bunch of recruiting stuff going on, and a news tidbit that's coming out today about the spring game. Is Carolina going to play their spring game or not? And what is my reaction to Carolina's choice to not play it or not play it? Make sure that you guys go to the website and check that out. But that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. I want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.